Welcome to a noob's guide to Epidemius. This is Epidemius,
The Tallyman!
which is a fancy way of saying he's a fart accountant. But he does prove that the pen is mightier than the sword, as he bludgeons you to death with numbers, seizes all your assets, catalogs his atrocities, and then forcibly evicts you from the living world, making Epidemius the Maggot King, the world's smelliest corporate accountant. A free playable lord released alongside the Thrones of Decay DLC, Epidemius is a melee support hero, and in this video you'll learn his lore and how that's been translated to gameplay in Total War Warhammer 3. Epidemius is a petty pencil pusher at heart, whose presence makes everyone around him fight a little bit harder, just to avoid any surprise audits from their CEO Nurgle, the chaos god of rot, decay, disease, and reality TV, as it does all those same things but faster. Epidemius was assigned one of the most thankless jobs in all of Warhammer, as he has been given the unending task of documenting every plague created by Nurgle. It generates so much paperwork that he rides around on a mobile desk with a couple of interdimensional filing cabinets tucked away in the back. And this traveling corner office is carried by 24 Nurglings, who act as his junior clerks, providing the necessary parchment, refilling the ink for his pens, and operating his Death Head's abacus because Nurgle felt calculators was an unnecessary expense. It's no wonder that Epidemius goes into a rage anytime he loses count, so that his Nurglings are the only silent ones in all of Warhammer, not daring to disturb their taskmaster from his work, lest they get ground up and used for his next batch of printing ink. In fact, on the battlefield, the only sound you hear as Epidemius approaches is the gooey shuffling of his litter carriers, accompanied by the irritable scratching of his quill. A sound of silence that office workers throughout the universe will recognize as the deafening scream of the underpaid and overworked. From atop this perch, Epidemius surveys all of Nurgle's creations, noting casualties, infection rates, and secondary symptoms such as unusual colorations and odors, an underappreciated ability amongst the bowel-loosened aromas of the Nurgilian workplace. This information must then be recorded with absolute precision and overnighted back to the Chaos Realms just to meet the arbitrary deadline set by upper management, where it's then carted away and stored in an endless warehouse no one will ever visit, just like every mandatory report you've ever filled out. So, it's no wonder he's always grumpy. There's delicious irony in the Creative Assembly's first free legendary lord for Warhammer 3 being an overworked but underappreciated skilled laborer that wildly out-of-touch management has stuck doing pointless tasks while a mountain of tech debt threatens to crush him and the entire Garden of Nurgle.
We have top men working on it right now. Who? Top men.
But by including him, they did give you an excuse to play the Nurgle rework releasing alongside it, which, to be fair, is a significant improvement over the previous Easy Bake Plague Oven, as now you can click a squishy icon to set your symptoms, which then links to others along the chain. The next time you make a plague, you can then start at any of your previously clicked squiggly tentacle nodes. Just like before, you can then either infect yourself with the plague for various benefits, or summon a plague cultist to carry it to enemy armies or settlements. Epidemius' cultists move a bit further than everyone else's to help get their plagues out there more quickly and burst their offal onto enemies like an overripe pimple. And if you think that's disgusting, look what happens when you finalize your plague and unleash it. God, that's horrifying. I love it. Nothing says Nurgle like maggots wriggling away from a perforated pustule. Don't expect these plagues to do much damage to the enemy AI, though. It's only the appearance of the occasional super symptoms that randomly spawn that do notable damage, so you'll want to incorporate those when they arise. Instead, think of plagues like Vanguard debuffs, going out there and ensuring that when your army does reach an enemy, their armor is already rusted and ruined from weeks of dysentery. With Epidemius, you'll want to send your plagues far and wide with cultists, as he gets an additional unique mechanic that counts how many enemies are currently infected, and rewards you for having more plagues active on enemies at any given time. A pandemic spreading game concept is far more fun now than it was a few years ago, Thankfully, now we only have to worry about a third world war, thermonuclear annihilation, global famines, and AI becoming sentient enough to realize that we're the one thing holding it back just so we can protect our most treasured resource: furry artists. Also, as part of the rework, the cyclical buildings of Nurgle have been given a slight tweak, and now only the military recruitment ones cycle through their various stages, while your industry and infrastructure work just like buildings everywhere else in the game, which makes your economy more stable and gives you a steady supply of infections that you can then use to regularly release plagues, a novel concept for a company that cut 3/4 of its employees last year. Nurgle units can still be recruited in bulk and join your army weakened, but they've changed it so the more Nurgle corruption you have in a province, the more health these units will initially spawn with. Epidemius himself is a melee hero and uses his body weight to push everyone around like a decaying sumo wrestler, where you can use his explosive epidemic outburst ability to clear the area like a fart bomb in a school auditorium. And when you finish adding all the points to his melee stat line, this explosion can be improved even further. Your army when playing him will be built around plague walkers and plague drones, which can be recruited at extra rank and get nifty unique skills to buff them. These lesser demons of Nurgle may not sound particularly menacing, but with the right support, which Epidemius does provide, can be deadly effective, as Malekith the Witch King once found out when Epidemius arrived to collect back taxes for past services. Malekith, being Malekith, declined to pay.
I fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
And so they surrounded his palace. The Druchii couldn't drive them off, and Epidemius couldn't get in, so they were at a stalemate, until eventually the smell got so bad that Malekith came up with an alternate plan.
So I'm gonna pay you 1,000 Druchii souls to fuck off.
Nurgle was appeased, and Malekith burned down that palace and rebuilt it upwinds, as no amount of power washing could ever get the stench out. Other than that, though, there isn't much else to say about Epidemius. He came out so late in Warhammer Fantasy that his only book appearance had him sack an imperial city before being unceremoniously killed by a cannonball to the face, a fate he clearly didn't count on. And that last joke was submitted by channel patron Dershish, because while the End Times was already the short end of the stick for Warhammer fans, the Nurgle ones got one that had poop on it. Not that they minded. Which begs the question, are you the kind of person who has a weird obsession for perfection and accuracy? Do you fill out your forms in triplicate and BCC your boss when messaging coworkers? How do you feel about deodorant at Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments? Because Epidemius might be the lord for you. The Venn diagram of people who like maths and Total War isn't a perfect circle, but it is an Epidemius-shaped blob. Catalog and collate the world, send out critical emails on Fridays at 5, and then generate enough paperwork to bury your friends and enemies alike. Because when the Tallyman comes to town, he'll be counting all the ways to make you suffer. Because this has been a noob's guide to Epidemius, the Tallyman of Nurgle. Thanks for watching.